Good morning, and welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. I hope you liked hearing our chime and bells recorded by Matthew Gladden earlier this week. We just thought that would bring back good memories and thoughts of our sanctuary. Our mission is to build community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace. I am the Reverend Florence Kaplow, the minister of this church, and we are so glad that you are joining us this morning. And I want to say that we are streaming the service from my home with the help of so many others. Thank you all. This is the beginning of the month of May, and we are deep, deep into spring, the time of the beautiful magnolias and daffodils has passed, and we are right in the middle of redbuds and dogwoods and all the middle spring flowers. Yesterday, with its sun and heat and big thunderstorm at night, was a little reminder that summer is just around the corner, that we stand on the threshold of summer. And indeed, our Soul Matters theme for May is thresholds. We are also, of course, deep into the time of this virus. Here in Illinois, beginning our second full month of stay-at-home orders. And I think I can safely speak for all of us when I say that we are very, very tired of this. And yet we know that we still have a long, long way to go. And that's hard. In some ways, we are still on the threshold of the new world that we entered just a few months ago with the first news reports out of Wuhan. This is a great challenge to every system in the world and to every one of us, physically and emotionally, and also for our spirits. This service is dedicated to the doorway we stand in, our old world behind us, the new world unknown ahead. Thresholds, doorways, balconies, windows. The photo that opened the service was one that I took on the island of Crete in Greece, one of the oldest civilizations in the West. A reminder that in that time too, there were windows looking out into the unknown sea, the great Aegean. There have always been thresholds, doorways, windows. I think of a favorite quote from the poet John O'Donohue. At any time, you can ask yourself, at which threshold am I now standing? At this time in my life, what am I leaving? Where am I about to enter? And we can ask that personally, and we can ask it for our country, and we can ask for the world. I wanted you to know there'll be a little time for coloring or drawing later in the service, so you might spend a moment getting a piece of paper and some crayons or some colored pencils so that you're ready when that time comes, and I'll tell you more about it when we get there. If you don't have crayons, just a pen and a piece of paper will do just fine. And thank you, all of you who sent in photos of you in your doorways. It will be fun to share those during the service. And finally, if you have a joy or sorrow to be shared this morning, you will see the email address to send it to during our prelude. As Emily McCown sings us an anthem by one of the great founders of the women's music movement, Holly Near, I Am Willing.
I am my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic all across the nation. There is wailing all around. I am hoping, I am willing to be hopeless, be so strange. It dishonors those who come before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though burn our eyes. 'Cause I am open and I am willing to be hopeless, be so strange. It dishonors those who come before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. 'Cause I am open, I am willing to be hopeless, be so strange. It dishonors those who come before us. So lift me up to the light of change.
Each Sunday, we begin with a land acknowledgement of the indigenous nations of this land. Wherever you are, please bring to mind the indigenous peoples of your place as I speak the words of our land acknowledgement. There will be a moment of silence after these words. We recognize and acknowledge that we gather today on indigenous land, taken through deception, coercion, and violence. We acknowledge the continued displacement and oppression of Native people and honor their commitments to survival, identity, and the protection of our world. And I particularly want to lift up this morning that COVID-19 is ravaging Native communities on reservations across the country. So please, special prayers for them today. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a flaming chalice at the beginning of our services. And we say the words together. And then if you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with us, or you can just light a candle if you wish. So let's say these words together. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming. Some people have said that they would love to hear the congregation singing. And so for our next hymn number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me, we found a service from February of 2019 with the congregation singing. So you can join in. Some of you will be joining in with your own voices of 150 or more people singing on that day in February.
The Door by Robert Creeley. For Robert Duncan. It is hard going to the door, cut so small in the wall, where the vision which echoes loneliness brings a scent of wild flowers in a wood. What I understood, I understand. My mind is sometime torment, sometimes good and filled with livelihood and feels the ground. But I see the door, and I knew the wall, and wanted the wood, and would get there if I could, with my feet and hands and mind.
I hope some of you found a piece of paper and a pen or pencil or crayons by now. If not, I invite you to use your imagination, which is also a wonderful place to draw and vision. So if you have your piece of paper, what I'd invite you to do is to make a rectangle on it. It could be, this doesn't quite look like a door, but the idea is that you're drawing the frame of a door on, as well as you can, on your piece of paper. And then as we listen to the music, I invite you to imagine forward to when this is all over, when the virus has passed, when we're all safe again, safe as we ever are, but safer. And what do you see through that doorway into your own life in the future? So we'll listen to the music and we'll have a chance to draw. And then, of course, feel free to keep exploring during the service. Believe me, I won't be offended if you want to keep drawing. I think that's a wonderful thing to draw and color during the service. So see where your imagination takes you. I was thinking as I was doing my drawing that we've probably never thought about doorways in the way that we do now, or inside and outside, and what that means. I find the photographs that you all sent in both beautiful and poignant. wanted to share my drawing. Here we go. What immediately came to mind for me is that I want at the end of this time to be more deeply rooted and to have new fruits, those are supposed to be apples, that have come from this time in my life. We, as Unitarian Universalists, acknowledge that we are part of the sacred web of life, of interconnections with each other, with the community, and with the wider world. And in this part of the service, we lift up those connections. Wherever you are, we want you to know that we consider you part of us and part of this community, and we want to be here for you. If you would like to connect more with us, please consider signing up for our mailing list, which you can find the link on our live stream page or on our website. And visit our website, and particularly our COVID-19 resources page. We're trying to do lots of things that will enable us to keep the bonds of community strong at this time. Each Sunday, we share half of our Sunday offering with an organization in alignment with our values, voted on each year by members and friends of UUCUC. And our shared offering for May is Sistering CU. Sistering CU is a fairly new organization which provides support for new parents in our community in the months after birth, completely free of charge. Please enjoy this short video from Sistering CU featuring its founder, Erin Murphy.
Before I started Sistering CU, I was a professor of sociology, and I taught classes on race and ethnic inequalities and social relations. And one of the glaring issues that I would teach about was the inequalities between the outcomes in Black maternal health and white maternal health. And so I was very interested in what we could do to help ameliorate those disparities. So I had the idea for a nonprofit that would be able to institute social kindnesses. And I thought, like, having people going to their homes and just helping them out and being there for them would be one way to reduce the chronic stress of racism, which was contributing to these higher rates of infant mortality and higher rates of Black maternal mortality as well. So those were the kinds of things I was thinking about. And then I had my kids, and I had 2 C-sections, and they were very difficult pregnancies, but I had a lot of help, and I knew about the help that other countries provided their mothers in, say, Western European countries and Asian countries, where in the postpartum period, somebody would come to your home and check on you and see how you're doing. They would also check on the baby. And so there was a period of oversight that was caring, and a period of time where they were looking at you as you became a mother and looking at your health as well. And we don't have anything like that here. We didn't have paid maternal or paternal leave that was required by law. We didn't have any kind of home visiting programs. So I thought people would want to show up for each other given the opportunity. So I decided, let's just look into this and see if this is a possibility. My favorite thing about Sistering CU is seeing how people show up for each other. It is an amazing, amazing experience to watch somebody, like a volunteer, go to somebody's home and create a relationship when they are vulnerable in that transition to becoming a parent. And then that parent, 8 months later, 9 months later, they're out of the fog of the newborn phase, and then coming to us, and maybe I've never met them before, but they come to us and they say, thank you. You have no idea what it meant to me to have this person witnessing that moment with me, and how helpful it was just to have somebody to talk to during that period of time. And it brings tears to my eyes. All that is social support and connection, and the meaningfulness of that connection is the thing that is the most healing for the new moms.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the generosity that you expressed after I spoke with you 2 weeks ago about our wondering about donations. This is a very uncertain time for all organizations, including UUCUC. And you showed that you still believe in our mission and want to support this church, our staff, and our work in the world, as well as the often small local organizations that we support through our shared offering. And these donations really make a huge difference. I had the joy of calling Dawn Blackman the other night and telling her that we had raised more than $4,000 for the Randolph Street Community Garden in March. I told her she needed to sit down first before I said it. And that'll go a long way towards her dream of building a new greenhouse at the gardens. So thank you all for your generosity. We now have a way to give quickly and easily by text and credit card. Those donations are shared equally between the shared offering and UUCUC, just like putting cash in the plate. Small and large donations are welcome. If you'd like to give us $1, that would be wonderful, and we'll share it. And you can also, as always, donate online or send a check after the service. The offering will now be received. Thank you, Alex. This is just glorious. Each Sunday, we bring our individual joys, sorrows, and concerns to our time together, whether we are gathered together in the sanctuary or gathered together across the globe. Wherever you are listening or watching today, please bring to mind the joys and sorrows in your life. As we sing a blessing song, we're working on having the congregation version of it. We're not quite there yet, but you will hear Austin singing the blessing song. You can join in as he sings, or just let it wash over you as a blessing. Thank you to all who sent in your personal joys and sorrows. I'll share them now. From Chris Hanauer, who is also our AV Wrangler this morning. Thank you, Chris. Sad that our daughter Sophie is leaving us today to return to her life in Madison after sheltering with us for the past 6 weeks. It has been wonderful to have her with us, but we know this is what she needs to do. A joy from Ellen Jacobson. At singing together this morning with so many voices and for an indigo bunting. And Ellen, I'm a little jealous of the bunting. From Scott Rohde. Relief to hear from my brother Rory that he tested negative for COVID-19 after having tested positive 2 weeks ago. He has been having racking symptoms before he got tested, but not the classic ones. About being in quarantine, he said, "Whenever I'm tempted to feel sorry for myself, I think of the POWs in Japan in World War II, Nelson Mandela, etc., and I've nothing to complain about." Thank you for that, Rory. I'm glad to hear you're better. From Jerry Carden. I'll put in a candle of joy and celebration of Austin Cody on his birthday today. We love you, Austin, from the choir. And I didn't realize it was Austin Cody's birthday. I hope you're listening, Austin, from upstate New York. Happy birthday from me too. From Jerry Carden as well, a sorrow for Bert Swanson. Candle of sorrow and remembrance of Bert Swanson. Bert graced our services and social functions for a few years prior to his long illness. I still remember his wonderful humor and laughter. From Jerry Carden and Tim Temple. And from the Pitzel family, sorrow over our friend's 1-year-old who broke her leg yesterday. From Aaron Dittmer, sorrow at the death of my freshman student, Davonte Brown. Oh, Davonte was a complicated person, but he was also sweet and kind. He had an incredible smile. I'll always remember how he sought out the sunny spots in our classroom. I'm going to miss joking around with him in our hallways and miss hearing his laugh. Davonte was at the very beginning of his life and had so much to figure out. It is tragic his life was cut short. My heart is with his family and friends during this sad time. And one more from Kim Kramer. Sending joy and safety to my niece, Teresa, an ER doctor on the Navajo Reservation, which is one of the places where COVID-19 is spreading like wildfire. And before we go into our time of meditation and prayer, I just want to say a thank you to, I guess this is a joy, to everyone in the congregation who is holding others in this time, whether it's the people staffing the warm line, the doctors that have said that they're available to us if we have questions, doctors in the congregation, the staff that have been working so hard, the AV team of Chris and Sean, just deep, deep joy and gratitude for these expressions of service and kindness and compassion at this time. And we will now have a time of silence, reflection, and prayer while we listen to a composition by our own Matt Gladden.
This reading is from a recent article titled "The Pandemic is a Portal" by Indian author and activist Arundhati Roy, published in Financial Times. Who can use the term "gone viral" now without shuddering a little? Who can think of kissing a stranger, jumping onto a bus, or sending their child to school without feeling real fear? Who can think of ordinary pleasure and not assess its risk? Who among us is not a quack epidemiologist, virologist, statistician, and prophet? Which scientist or doctor is not secretly praying for a miracle? What is this thing that has happened to us? It's a virus, yes, but it's definitely more than a virus. Some people believe it's God's way of bringing us to our senses. Others that it's a Chinese conspiracy to take over the world. Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world.
Isn't that an extraordinary reading from Arundhati Roy? Just really appreciating her words and her reminders that this is a portal, a threshold, a doorway. I'd like to invite you now to look around the room you're in. Almost certainly, somewhere in that room is a doorway or a window. Take a look. Maybe you can even see out that door or window to the world outside. Notice that it's not just a doorway between two rooms or between inside and outside. It's actually its own thing too. Earlier this week, in one of my brief morning attempts at inspiration, I talked about being in the middle of the middle of the middle and how that feels, but that the middle itself is an actual place, a place to appreciate, to have patience with, to be present with. One of my very, very favorite words is liminal, which comes from the Latin limen, or threshold. When I hear the word liminal, I think of a place between, a blurred place, like the light between twilight and dark and the light between before dawn and full daylight. Or, like this moment, is this the end of spring or the beginning of summer, or somewhere in between? A liminal space is also an open space, a place where things are not so clearly defined and where possibilities emerge that were not seemingly possible in the more well-defined places of our lives, and where a kind of freedom is possible, although also, to be fair, a liminal place is a risky place, a dangerous place, and we know that too. But liminal, I think the most important thing is that liminal is not really about past or future, but the ever-changing, ever-fluid now. And could we be in a more liminal time than right now? I've heard that Some organizations and churches, instead of putting together annual budgets, they're doing quarterly budgets because they can't even imagine out more than 3 months. I don't think any of us really can. And when in our lives has it been like this before? But really, and on the other hand, this is always the place where we are. The threshold between this moment and the next moment. Life unfurling in front of us as we bravely step through the doorway or are dragged reluctantly through the doorway or stumble through the doorway to we don't know what. We never quite know what, despite our best predictions, our graphs, our tables, our experts. Sometimes the doorway is one of joy and new beginnings. Sometimes the doorway is one of saying goodbye, of letting go, of great change. Every spring, actually often, not just in the spring, I think of the Japanese understanding of this poignant appreciation for the ephemeral nature of things. Just as they are, knowing that they will fade, they will change, just as we fade and change. The term is mono no oware, which has, I think, qualities that maybe really are untranslatable, both sweet and sad, deeply appreciative and also mourning. In Japan, one of the most important moments of the year is right now when the cherry blossoms go into flower. Right? So maybe depends on the year, we're a little past. But people go back to their villages and to the places where the cherry blossoms are particularly extraordinary, everywhere in Japan, just to see the flowers. And I love that. I love that people travel to see flowers. And of course, there's the moment when the flowers first come out on the trees, but the most beautiful moment is when they fall like pink and white snow on the grass. And that is particularly appreciated, and people picnic under the trees while the blossoms fall on them. I found it very poignant that this year Japan House, our own Japan House, canceled their cherry blossom viewing out of fears for the safety of the many people that come to see the blossoms during this time of year. And so the blossoms at Japan House are falling with fewer viewers. I know that a few people have been going over there, but still nothing like the crowds that gather and photograph each other and laugh and picnic beneath the blossoms. There's a wonderful book of haiku, and haiku, for those of you who may be not so familiar with it, haiku is always, to some degree, seasonal and is meant to be permeated with this feeling of mono no aware. And one of my favorite books of haiku was collected by friends of mine at the 100th birthday of a haiku poet named Mitsu Suzuki, who was the widow of Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, who brought my lineage of Zen to America. And she was a really highly respected haiku poet. And these were 100 poems for her 100th birthday. The name of the book is A White Tea Bowl, 100 Haiku from 100 Years of Life. So I wanted to share a few of her spring haiku with you to give you a sense or flavor of this mono no aware. Her laughter comes ahead to greet me, spring in motion. Mother on intravenous, daughter pushing her wheelchair, path of wild plums. dreaming all night long, fragrance of peach blossoms. And one more. The tree of my life has 96 rings. Fresh spring breeze. And I've had the privilege of spending a couple of longer periods of time in Japan, a few weeks. And one of the things you first notice about Japan is that it is a country of gates. Gates everywhere. From exquisitely humble bamboo and brushwood gates, Zen gardens, to towering 1,000-year-old gates in front of Buddhist temples with snarling guardian deities on either side of the gate. But the ones that touched me the most were the simple red torii gates in Shinto shrines, mountaintop Shinto shrines. All they are is two tall beams with a cross beam across, often, but not always, painted red. No wall on either side. The birds can fly through from one side to another. And torii gates mark areas that are sacred, although what I love about them is that they are identical on either side. So really, are you entering sacred land, or are you leaving sacred land, or is it sacred on both sides of that gate? On one of my trips to Japan, oh, and by the way, I'm going to be offering a auction item from last year, sometime this month, keep your eyes open, of a slideshow from the temples and monasteries of Japan. So I hope you have a chance to join us. Of course, it will be online, which wasn't the original intent, but looking forward to sharing those images with you. One of the trips that I did was a Zen pilgrimage. And as part of that, we went to an ancient area in southern Japan on the main island called Koyasan, one of the most sacred Buddhist pilgrimage sites in Japan, with hundreds of temples and monasteries. Japanese people have been going there since it was founded just a little past the year 800. But from its founding until 1870, no women were allowed within the precincts of Koyasan. And so the women built a pilgrimage trail that went all around the outside, from gate to gate. And I was able to walk that trail with two other women Zen priests one day. And all along that journey, there were torii gates high up on the highest ridges. Again, just open to forest and sky and birdsong. And I was really struck by the contrast. So, on the one hand, gates and doorways can keep out as well as invite in. And sometimes gates can keep out in a way that is protective, in the way that we are staying safe in our houses. But sometimes gates are keeping those who are not valued as highly in society out. So I think about all those who stand on the other side of closed gates and doorways right now. Those who are not white, those who are poor, those who are without houses, those who are mentally ill, those who are different in some way. And we know, we've always known that to be kept outside the gates of good health care, of good food, of education, of so many things that so many of us take for granted is potentially life-shortening. But right now, in the age of COVID-19, it is brutally, painfully clear that the effect of those gates is leading to so many more deaths in those communities. This is a cruel and heartbreaking reality of the moral rot in the middle of our culture. And may it wake us up. May it wake us up and really address this. Can we recognize the doors and gates and guardian deities in our own hearts and in our communities, and find ways to make them more like Tory gates, those wonderful gates on the women's pilgrimage path, recognizing difference but locking no one out, locking no one in? Sometimes a whole culture, and now even a whole world, stands on a threshold. The Buddhist philosopher Joanna Macy calls this time even before COVID-19, the time of the great turning. Not knowing how we will make the turn or what it will look like on the other side, but recognizing that we are at a time, a threshold time in our world. COVID-19 has really shown us this as well. We simply don't know which way or how things will go. So I ask, can we really open ourselves? Can we willingly turn towards the future and imagine a future that is better than the past? Maybe we can meet the thresholds of our lives and the world, wanted or unwanted, with some of that willingness, sense of invitation and promise. I think of the words that we heard Julie read from Arundhati Roy, which I thought were very moving, where she talks about COVID-19, the pandemic, being a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us, or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world. In Zen, we bow to one another as a gesture of honoring. Maybe there's a way to bow as we pass through this gate in our lives, with gratitude and understanding and a willingness to weep for all that is changing, all that is arriving, all that we are given every moment. As the Japanese poet Ryokan wrote, "At dawn, I see the 1,000 gates and doors thrown open." So let's sing with Austin Cody. Happy birthday, Austin, again. The beautiful hymn, "Winds Be Still."
And silence come, peace great.
just wanted to mention, I hope that you consider, if you haven't tried it yet, joining our fellowship hour after, it's not really an hour, our fellowship time after the service, which is much like our gathering for coffee and conversation and sweets that we used to have when we were in our building. But this is virtual via Zoom. You'll see the link on a slide, but if you want to click on the link, you can go to our live stream page and you'll find it there along with the password. And we'd love to have you join us. It's hosted by Sherry Bolin, our Director of Congregational Engagement, as well as Michelle Grove, our Interim Director of Religious Education. And it is a time to get to know some people that you might not otherwise know. So I hope you consider joining us for that. My blessing for you as we go forth into our days, wherever we may be, is that whatever thresholds we face today or in the coming times, may they be a blessing, a promise, and an invitation. May we find in ourselves the courage and willingness to turn towards the changes in our lives. And may we find, as a culture and a world, that same courage and willingness. Let us remember, as the hymn reminded us, that we move through the winds of eternity. There's a chalice extinguishing that I have said that I would like to keep doing until we are back in the sanctuary together again. The words are on your screen. Please join me. You can extinguish your own chalice if you have it with you. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And I'm going to blow it out. I have one more thing to say. I want just to invite you in our postlude to join in. You'll hear the same song that Emily sang at the beginning of the service, I Am Willing, but it's a different arrangement of it, and you'll see the words, and I hope you consider just singing along, because it's really inspiring and it's a good reminder to turn towards willingness. Blessed be.
I am open and I am willing, but to be hopeless would be so strange. It dishonors those who've come before us. So lift me up to the light of change. I am open and I am willing, but to be hopeless would be so strange. It dishonors those who've come before us. So lift me up to the light of change. I am open, and I am willing, but to be hopeless would be so strange, such a shame. It dishonors those who've come before